Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lusk coming at you from a remote location in Pueblo, Colorado. Debbie and I are headed out on vacation. Going to go hang out with all sets of our kids, half of them in Breckenridge, Colorado. Never been there. Think it's going to be fun. At least it'll be cool. Then from there we're going to go to Arkansas and hang out with almost all the grandbabies. So Debbie's pretty fired up about that, and I'm right there with her. So, hey, you guys know the drill. Click like. Share this video to your timeline. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section, and you're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat. Hey, Pond Boss Magazine, y'all know what I'm going to say. $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. We spent a little more than that on our date last night. We stopped in Amarillo, Texas last night, and everybody's heard of the Big Texan. And I've been by there since I was probably knee-high to a grasshopper. I think they say that in Texas. But never stopped there. Last night we went. The food was all right. It's pretty good. It's a tourist trap, but it's a fun one. Hey, Danny Mac, good to see you, buddy. Glad you're here. Hey, tonight I thought I'd start off talking about the it. The it. You know, as a fisheries biologist, early on in my career, it was... the it was about the fish. It's about the fish. Well, it took me a while to figure out that it really isn't. The fish play an important role. Don't get me wrong on that, but I would recommend that you figure out your it. And once you do that, hey, John Wilson, good to see you. Hey, John Harson, glad to see you too. John Big Frog Wilson, man, he's in the pond management business up in Ohio. You guys check him out. After the show, click on his Facebook page and go see what you can find there. He's been at it a long, long time, really good at what he does. John Wilson, check him out. He's got a great business up there in the north, and he's also spread his wings out into Georgia as well. So if you're looking for some pond management in that part of the planet, give Big Frog Wilson a call. Hello, Eric. Hello, John Henry. Hey, about the it, and John, you know what? You're gonna be nodding your head when you hear this. When we sit down with a client as a consultant, if I'm going to help somebody design a lake, yeah, my backdrop looks like a hotel room. Guess what? It is a hotel room. There's the window. See? That's why I got it like this. Hanging out at the La Quinta, one of our favorite hot spots. So, what I want to talk to you about, and John Wilson knows this. Aqueduct Lake and Pond Management Company. Great company. He knows when he'll sit down with a client, the first thing he's going to do is find out what is their it. What is it? Most of the time when guys like me get a call, it's, hey, I want to grow the biggest fish on the planet, or I'd like from I did not get the La Bourbon. In fact, I don't have anything to drink. We'll have to figure out how to do that later. My wife just rolled her eyes. So we sit down with a client and we start talking to them about their goals. What's the mission? If we know what the mission is, we're more likely to hit it. And I love to sit down, and a lot of times the client doesn't even know what their goals are. It's, hey, I bought this place. It's got a pond on it. We want to make it good fishing. Okay, well, what does that mean? You want to catch big catfish, or you want to have grandkids catching bluegills off the dock? What is it? What is it? Does your wife want to have a place where she can sit on a bench and read a book under a shade tree and listen to the water lap up against the shore? So it took me a long time, and I tell you what happened to me. Back around 2004, I got a call from a young biologist in upstate New York, and he was in dire straits to try to figure out how to please this demanding boss. His boss was very demanding. Ask me how I know, because I got to meet the guy, got to work with him. So it's a really long, entertaining story, but I'm going to tell you this. When I went up there, they had just fired recently a retired fisheries biologist for the entire state of upstate New York for inland fisheries. He was the department head. He worked for them for 6 months and they fired him. So I got thinking about that. Why in the world would they bring a guy from Texas that knows nothing about northern fish and northern fishing and bring me up there to help them figure out how to create a good fishery? So I got to talking to the property manager, who is a dear friend to this day, Bucky Lanehart up there at Savannah Dew was the property. And he said, man, we're stymied. We don't have good fishing experiences. People aren't catching what we think they should. And we think, we want to grow some bass over 8 pounds. So I thought that was it. I thought growing 8-pound bass was it. And then I thought, but they fired the best biologist they could have hired that knows that entire area better than anybody else on the planet. Why'd they fire that guy? And as I started digging down into it, I said, okay, Bucky, what's the problem? He says, I don't know. That's why you're here. So I said, well, you got to help me figure this out. I'm kind of new here, and we need to talk about this. And he says, I don't know. He says, here's what I know. The Prime Minister of Italy was fishing here a few months ago, and he caught 1 4-inch bluegill, and he made fun of it at dinner because they were having some pretty high-profile meetings there trying to create a resort destination in that part of the planet for the owner, and he was embarrassed. I thought, oh, wait a minute. It is not about trying to grow 8-pound bass, although we need to do that. It is about somebody coming and catching some good fish. So we started dialing in on the it, and the it in that case was how to experience the property. So what I'm going to encourage you guys to do is if you're a consultant, figure out the it. If it's your pond, what is your it? And once you can figure that out, then you're going to be more successful in trying to figure out what to do. So here's the way I like to see it work. I like to establish the goals. Ask what is it? What is your it? Is your it to have a beautiful pond? Is it a place to hike around it? Is it to water the garden? Is it to grow big fish? Figure out your it. Once you know your it, there's the mission. Then you got to assess. Where are you? What kind of shape is your pond in? Go through the 5 fundamental promises. Guys, say it with me. Water, happy water. Habitat. What's the next one? That's right, food chain. Right genetics for your area and a harvest plan. If you can figure out those 5 things, assess those 5 things, then you can come up with a game plan to reach your it. So take that to the it bank. Hello, Mike Cottrell. Good to see you. All right, let's see here. Eric, you're pitching out the questions. You've always got some really good questions, dude. Hope you got the LA bourbon. You know what? I didn't get it. So wait, you know what? If you sent me some, I didn't get it. No, I don't have any LA bourbon. John Harson, my it is 2-pound bluegill, 4-pound red ear, and 8-pound bass. Well, I tell you what, knock a home run. So now how do you figure that out? So let's take John Harson's topic right there, 2-pound bluegill. Well, how do you do that? You got to have the right genetics, and you got to feed them, and you've got to have a good culling program, which typically involves large amount of bass. Now, the 4-pound red ear, I hope you're in Arizona. Quagga mussels. The thing about trying to grow giant red ear is they won't eat fish food. They're going to eat snails, mostly snails and mussels and crustaceans. They call them shell crackers for a reason. All right, let's see here. I like that. I like the fact that John knows his it. All right, Eric, what should I be checking or doing to my pond this time of year? Good question. I'll hit that. Steve Sharf, good evening, Mr. Lush. Hey, dude, that's on Saturday nights. I'm Lusk on Tuesdays. Lust on Friday nights. Oh, you've corrected it. Attaboy. Hello, Bobby West. Good to see you, my dear friend. Let's see here. Mark Dyer, hello. Justin Ludwig, hello. What should I be checking or doing to my pond this time of year? This time of year, it's hot. Oh, yeah. Brilliant deduction, Einstein. Be checking your temperature. I would be checking temperature at the surface. Compare it to a foot deep, 3 feet deep, 5 feet deep, 7 feet deep. Figure out where your thermocline is. Check visibility. Visibility is real important. If you'll be checking visibility and then get a good idea as to what the color of your pond is, here's an example. Eric, if you go check the water temperature and it's 88 degrees right now, your visibility is 10 inches, and the water's pea soup green, you're in trouble. Now, if it would look like that back in April or May, it would have been a home run. So you're wanting to check visibility to measure the plankton bloom to see how much algae growth you've got, how much zooplankton, how much phytoplankton. So the visibility is a good thing to be checking, and I would sure keep some temperature profiles if you're really getting into the pond management thing. And write it down, plot it on a spreadsheet. If you know how to work a spreadsheet, plot it on a spreadsheet so you can see it. Check it in the afternoon, check it in the morning, and see how that compares. It's really interesting. You may see as much as a 10 degree swing through the course of a day with your water temperature at the surface. But what you'll find is 4 feet down, there won't be a 10 degree temperature swing. Hello, Chuck Anzalone. Good to see you, buddy. Hope things are all good. Steve Sharf, don't be embarrassed. People do that to me all the time, and they don't mean it. So, hey, going back to the it. So, once you really figure out your it, then you start thinking about how can I get there. Now, when I'm working with a client and we assess, of course, I'll use an electrofishing boat to figure out the fishery. We'll get out there and quantify the aquatic plants, identify the aquatic plants. We see what you got. We'll do water chemistry. We'll dig into those 5 fundamental principles, and once we do that and we got some data, then we can start making decisions. Do you need to change the fishery? Do you need to add some of Ron Krisman's smallmouth bass? Hello, Ron. Good to see you, buddy. What is it you need to do? And then you come up with a game plan and a budget and a timeline. A lot of times the timeline determines the budget. So, you know, if you're working with guys my age, they're usually in a hurry and they have a budget. But if you're working with somebody 27 years old with a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, 3 years out of college, making, you know, $62,000 a year and inherited the family farm and got a 3-acre pond, they got $500 if Christmas is going to be okay. So you got to figure out your timeline. That helps determine your budget. See what Mark Dyer is saying. After my bluegill have been spawning, I'm now seeing them get covered with anchor worms. Anchor worms. You know, anchor worms are typically, are you sure they're not fish lice? Anchor worms, they're a worm that goes under the skin of the fish, embeds a head that's got little barbs on it. And then the anchor worm's about that long, and it's forked at the end. It's kind of white. It'll grow some algae on it. If you take it and pull it, it'll come right out. Typically, you see anchor worms and golden shiners coming from some bait fish farms around the country. Most of the time, those hatcheries will kill the anchor worms before they sell the fish. But anchor worms, those will be eaten by red ear sunfish. So if you've got fish lice are different. They look like little moving fish scales. They typically cling to the outside of the fish underneath it, and they're kind of a light green color. You see them on bass and bluegill, scaly kind of fish more than anything else. Let's see here. Kenny thought they were anchor worms from pictures. They look like nasty, bloody pimples, kind of. Okay, so those bloody pimples are typically grubs that are either exiting or entering the fish. And grubs this time of year are pretty normal. Their primary host are snails. So what happens is the snails host the grub, then a free-swimming cercaria, there's your big word for the day, exit, and they swim through the water attached to a fish, then they'll embed into the fish. So most of the time when you see those bloody blisters, they're usually grubs that are entering the fish, and they can attack them and attach to them. Oftentimes when they're sitting on a nest. So this is the time of year that they'll go into the fish. Other fish like bass and wiper and crappie haven't had these. That's probably because they're sitting on a nest not far from aquatic plants where there are snails. Stock some red ear sunfish, those numbers will go down. But if they have little bloody pimples, if you've got anchor worms, they don't usually make a mark on the fish. You just see what looks like a tiny little white hair sticking out of the fish, kind of like about as big as a mechanical pencil lead. That's the best description I can come up with. Stephen Martin, do you know of anyone that's used a product like soil flock to seal a pond? Yeah, Yeah, I know a number of people that use soil flock. I really don't want to drain mine. I have to start over with stocking it again. It's only half acre. You're a pretty good candidate for that, depending on your soils and how much your pond leaks. So the description I use is what holds water better than anything on the planet? A bathtub, right? Except for that little bitty hole down in one end. I'm pretty sure Danny Mac invented the bathtub. That guy's a rocket scientist. Hello, Todd Austin. Danny, help me out. We got to seal a leaky bathtub. Oh, wait, put a plug in it. Well, when you're trying to seal a pond, you got to find out where's the leak. And that's the hard part, because it could be anything from an improperly packed lift of dirt in the dam when it was being built. It could be a vein of gravel in the bottom. It could be just a meandering little cavity, but from loose soils. So if you can figure out where the leak is, then products like Soil Flock are really good. They're polymers, vegetable-based polymers that will seek the leak if you get close. And then when it hits, it'll swell up and get sucked into the leak and plug it up. So it's not hard to apply. The catch-22 is if you don't hit the leak, you won't stop the leak. But it's a good product to use for that. Hello, Todd Austin. Hashtag Pond Balls Magazine. Good stuff. All right, guys, start pitching some questions at me. There's a Cracker Barrel right over there. And when we get done here, I think we're going to go see what we can find over there that's health food. Which, I don't know what that means. They don't have a bar, I know that. So, let's see here. Let me scroll back down here and make sure I've got everybody so far. Yep. All right. Staying on the topic of leaks, how would you determine one leak? Oh, that's a great question. How do you determine leak versus evaporation? All right. I just got a call from a guy that I helped design the habitat plan on his lake east of Medill, Oklahoma. And he saw a wet spot on the back side of the dam down low where the creek is that they dammed up, and he was really concerned that his dam was leaking. So I said, all right, here's what you got to do. You got to figure out how to quantify how much water is leaving. So what he did, I had him just go drive a T-post in the mud and get a yardstick from the lumber yard there in Medill, and he zip tied it to the T-post. Now you can buy a special device that helps you measure lakes dropping, but I told him to go out there every day and look at it and see where it is and write it down. And right now he's losing a little bit less than half an inch a day. Now keep in mind, it's been knocking on the door of 100 degrees around Medill, Oklahoma every day this week. So evaporation is going to be pretty close to half an inch a day. So he's figuring out that he's got between an eighth and a half an inch of water disappearing. Some of that's due to wicking because the pond is recently filled, or the lake, it's about a 6-acre lake. Now, it did fill up on top of saturated soils. So, if it was leaking significantly, he would see water flowing on the backside of the dam where the wet spot is. Now, that's not true of all leaks. If it's leaking through the bottom of the pond, you won't see it exit. It may not manifest itself until it's half a mile downstream on somebody else's property on a creek. And they think they've got a spring. Nope, it's your lake leaking. His isn't leaking, because he's losing half inch or less a day. That's evaporation. So, that's one of the ways to start figuring out if it's leaking. And Mike Otto's always told us, you know what? Every dam leaks, every one. And they all do. I haven't met one yet that doesn't. So between water wanting to evaporate and a little bit of seepage, then you're okay. Justin Ludwig, that's good advice. So let's see here. Let me scroll up here. Steve Scharf, how frequently after stocking a new pond would you recommend checking growth? Don't do it for 2 years. You'll be really disappointed because you won't be able to catch nearly as many fish as you think. In the first couple of years, if you've stocked it right, you've built a great food chain, your fish are thriving, they're growing, they're hard to catch because they're not hungry, they're eating. But by about the middle of the third year, toward the end of the third year, that's when you start checking growth, length, and weight. Now, if you want to catch a few fish, go out and catch a few fish, but don't be surprised if your catch rates are low the first year to 18 months. So I would recommend starting, like if you want to analyze it electrofishing wise, I'd wait till the third year and then start looking. Because here's why: your food chain is expanding. Your game fish, let's just take largemouth bass because that's the main focus. Most lakes, they're growing, and by year 3 they've started to reproduce. So the first couple of years, it's the fish that you stocked that are really thriving. Now a bass will spawn at 9 inches, so some of the best at the end of the first year may reproduce, but they're not going to fill a real big void. That's going to start happening in year 3. So that's a good time to start checking the growth rates. Now, if you want to catch a few and do it just for fun, do it. But don't be concerned if your catch rates are low. That's normal. John Harson, I asked you last week about adding the bass. We have 2 acres and put in 2,000 bluegill, red ear hybrids, and 100 catfish. You recommended 100 fingerling bass. Should we add any more catfish or any other fish? No. I don't think I would. Nope, I don't think I would. I think you got a good stocking plan. I would feed them. You know, if you want to add more catfish, you can add more catfish. The more catfish you add, the more you're going to be compelled to want to harvest by the time they're hitting 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds. John Dyer, checking in, hoping for a tropical rain. I'm living the old joke about my catfish getting sunburned. Buy sunscreen and flea powder, dude. Trey Carpenter, without close electricity nearby, what's the best option for aeration? Windmill, solar panel, and aerators, or ducks? Well, if you can do a better job of teaching your ducks than I was able to do with mine, that might be an option. Go on to the Palm Boss website, go to the resource guide, and look some things up, especially outdoor water solutions. Look those guys up. There's a number of companies that have solar aeration systems, and there's 2 ways to do solar. One is with batteries, one is without. Without batteries, the solar system is going to run when the sun's shining directly on the solar panel. If you've got batteries, then the solar panels can charge the batteries up to where the aeration system can run longer. It just costs more. So you got to figure out the cost versus the risk versus the reward. And plus, windmills and solar aeration systems have limits as to the size of ponds that they can aerate. So part of that due diligence is to figure out how big the pond is and figure out the bottom contour as best you can. Using a little microscope, how accurate can a regular person age a fish by counting the rings? Where's the best place to grab a scale, or does it matter? Yeah, it matters. Pull them off get 3 or 4 scales off of the lateral line of a fish. I tell you, it's a good idea to go buy some betadine, and if you have some tweezers, you can put just a little bit of betadine on that scale. Look at it through a microscope or a magnifying glass even. And you got to figure out how you got to count the annular rings, which are the rings on the outside of the scale. And if you can count those, and if you do 3 scales per fish, then you can get an average. You might count two rings on one, 3 on one, 3 on one. That fish is 2.5, 3 years old. And it does matter. Get them off the lateral line. Okay, John added 20 pounds of fatheads and feed Aquamax 4. That's good. You're on a good track. You got your first magazine this week. All right. Hey, Dave Weber, let's see what you got here. Is it feasible or advisable to tag all the largemouth bass that a guy initially stocks in his pond? Depends on how big those bass are. I've had guys do that. I've had guys buy 8 to 10 inch bass, and we tag every single one of them. I remember one, we had like 500 bass, and there were 3 of us with tagging guns. It still took us an hour and a half. And then we had to handle every fish. We went in and sedated them with some clove oil to keep them from flopping around and injuring themselves. But is it feasible? You can't tag fingerlings. If it's under about 7 inches long, I'm not comfortable sticking a Floyd tag in it. Maybe a pit tag, but I don't want to waste a $4 pit tag on a 7-inch fish. I like to tag those fish when they're bigger. But yes, so the question is it feasible or advisable to tag all the largemouth bass that a guy initially stocked? Yes, it is. It is feasible. Those Floyd tags are now about $1.50 a piece. And the dadgum tagging gun that should be worth about 69 cents is $60. What is the best time of day to feed the fish in the summer? I'm going to let you decide that. Here's how I'm going to tell you to decide it. In the afternoon, the water's the hottest. And they're going to feed the least toward the end of the day. But when you get toward dusk, the water's still pretty hot, and fish are used to feeding at dusk. If you feed in the morning, like at sunup, that's when the oxygen levels are the lowest. So what I would suggest is feed like 9 in the morning or 10 in the morning, because the sun's up, oxygen's ginning again from photosynthesis. That's a good time. Feed them at 9 o'clock in the morning, and if you want to feed them a second time, go 8 hours past that and do that, so like 5 o'clock. Say, Scott, how many 8-inch plus gizzard shad to fully populate a 15-acre lake? Bass population is good, and over 70% are bigger than 17 inches, and they wipe out the shad population so quick. If I had 2 to 5 inch gizzard shad, they all get wiped out. I've seen a few bigger shad, is obviously they repopulate some shad each year, but not enough to put on the desired bass weight we want. Okay, that's really a 4-part question, and I'm going to tackle at least 2 parts of it. An 8-inch plus gizzard shad, let's just take a 10-inch gizzard shad. That girl shad is going to lay 150,000 eggs, so 1 is enough. Don't do that. But if you can put 50 8-inch plus gizzard shad in a 15-acre lake, that's probably enough to repopulate it. Now, here's the second part. Some of those shad have got to live long enough to get to be 5 or 6 inches long. So if your bass are crowded enough that they annihilate the shad, then trying to get them established is not going to be as easy as it sounds, because those shad lay a lot of eggs. So one thing I would look at, I'm presuming you may have stocked threadfin shad as well, and let's talk about the difference between those. Threadfin shad, the biggest one I've ever seen was 3 years old and 7 inches long. Most of the time, they'll make it to 3 to 5 inches, live 18 months or so before they get wiped out. However, a bunch of young ones get eaten fast. Now, here's threadfin shad's role in a bass lake is to feed 12 to 14 inch bass, or maybe 10 to 14 inch bass. Those shad will school in the middle of the lake. Those small bass will go chase them, eat them, thin their numbers out, and if you get enough to make it through the winter and your water temperature doesn't get too cold, then they go at it again the next year. Gizzard shad, on the other hand, are bottom feeders. Once the baby gizzard shad are going to run in schools and filter their food from the water column until they're about 3 to 5 inches long. Then they're going to go to the bottom and start to feed on the bottom. So they're better to feed your bigger bass, like the bass that are 17 inches and bigger. So when you got 70% of your bass bigger than 17 inches, now let me tell you what that means to me. 70% of the mass of bass are bigger than 17 inches. I don't read that as 70% of the numbers. I don't see that. That doesn't make sense to me. 70% of the bass mass. So in other words, if you've got 70 pounds of bass per acre, 50 pounds of those are 17 inches and bigger. That's how I read that. Then I do think that you need gizzard shad. Now, if those bass are wiping them out, you need to look at culling some bass. So if you're not weighing and measuring bass, which I bet you are, start doing that. And judge those fish based on their body condition, then decide which ones you want to cull. Good question, real good question. So hey, it's almost 7. Let's do a little commercial. Hey, Pond Balls Magazine, $35 a year. Okay, I don't have to say it. You guys already know it. $35. That's what fuels the economy for Pond Boss. That and the advertisers that are in it, like these guys are out here. You guys know them, right? So, hey, also Easy Docks of Texas, they're a sponsor. David Schneiderman, check them out. Purity Mills, Aquamax Sport Fish Feeds. You just saw a picture of that right here. Texas Hunter Feeders. Check those guys out, TexasHunterProducts.com. They got all kinds of good stuff. So, hey, looks like we're about out of questions, and I'm ready to go eat supper. So, still not cheaper. $35 isn't cheaper than your wife? That's all the reason to subscribe to, hey, Pond Boss Magazine, $35 a year. So, hey, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Now, it's been 30 minutes, and we're going to Yeah, Mark Dyer, I get it, dude. So, hey, I'm going to tell you guys goodbye for tonight. And I don't know where I'm going to be next Tuesday. I think maybe in Arkansas, in a remote area. If we have a sale, I'll come at you live again. But I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to end it right now, 30 minutes in. That was a good little discussion. John Arson, I'm not going to tell her you said that. So, hey, guys, thanks for checking in, watching this. And adios for now. We'll see you next week.